apologize. I don't know how that's happening.
You've got two devices on.
Yes.
Okay, you need to kill the sound output from one of them.
Okay, working on it. Yes, please go ahead, introduce yourself. We're just talking about what brings you here today, your name and where you're at.
As I'm talking, I might as well carry on.
I muted one of you. I hope I didn't mute both of you. You might have muted the other one.
Say something, EB. Both muted by the sound of it.
You need to prevent the sound from going off on one, because otherwise you get an echo, which is what's going on. That looks like it's coming from Elaine, actually.
We're still getting the echo. But to fill the gap, hi, DLJ from currently in the UK, from Malaysia. New to Stoicism. New to everything, really. Hi, DLJ from currently in the UK.
Elaine, I'm gonna mute you because there seems to be some feedback coming through your system. Welcome, and I'm excited to be having Greg introduce you to Stoicism, because I think, Greg, you're the one that introduced me to Stoicism, quite frankly. So you get to introduce someone else to Stoicism, and it's been a huge value in my life since Greg introduced it to me, but I'll say more about that later. Sorry, I forgot to.
Got a Zoom bomber.
Yeah. So give me 1 minute. I forgot to lock down the meeting when I joined.
Garrett, you can make Will a co-host, and I can be one.
Yeah, I need to lock down the meeting first, and then I can do that.
Elaine, your echo's gone. Good news.
All right.
Hi, Greg. Thank you for coming.
Hey.
Oh, great, everyone. Greg. Oh my, lots of noise today. Well, anyhow, we're continuing. You all can introduce yourself.
Wonder where they're from. Sounds like Staten Island to me.
Congo.
So the first Zoom bomber is gone, but we may have more. Sometimes they group up. And let me make Will and Ellis hosts so that they can help with the Zoom bomber extravaganza. Some people are so miserable. The sad part is they need Stoicism the most, but they're not going to be the ones to get it tonight because they're too disruptive. But that said, let's continue on with introductions for anyone that wants to introduce themselves.
Back in your cage, monkey.
So that one was Alex. If you,
I got that.
Yeah.
Thank you. But I do appreciate people calling out who it was if they see it. But I did catch that one. So for any other people who are intending to Zoom bomb, you would actually do much better to listen to Greg's talk, because you really need what he has to teach you. And if you need coaching, feel free to reach out offline, because I'm sure these people are very sad, and they really need help in their lives more than the rest of us even. So I do feel for them, but nonetheless, they're going to get removed if they Zoom bomb. So anyone else want to introduce themselves real quick? Like maybe who you are, where you're coming from, and where you learned about the event?
I'm Joe Bullock. I am from the Philadelphia area, and learned through the event, through Meetup, and know Greg well.
Great. Welcome,
Nice
Joe.
to see you, Greg.
Anyone else?
Me. Yes, we're just going through. If anyone is new to the group, welcome to introduce your name and where you're from and what brings you here, and how has Stoicism improved your life, and if you're new to it as well.
Hello.
curiosity, I'd like to know the ins and outs of it.
Sorry, say that again, Nicholas. We couldn't hear you well.
Oh, sorry. I know of it. I know of Stoicism, but I don't know the ins and outs of it thoroughly. So I'm curious if this meetup will help.
All right, great. Well, I think Greg will give you a primer, and I will say for those that choose to adopt Stoicism into their lives, you know, it's a very valuable philosophy, and I think you'll find that it will resonate with you as it did with me. So, anyone else want to introduce themselves?
I call from.
Xin chao, Susie.
Yeah. Hello.
Hey, how are you?
All right. How are you? Huh?
Good,
How are you, Garrett? Yeah.
good.
Can I? Okay. If somebody wanted to say something.
We just wanted to, we were just introducing ourselves. I thought you were introducing yourself, so that's why I said hi to you.
Hi. Yeah. My name is Susie, and I'm calling in from Westmont, New Jersey. Yeah. If somebody wanted to say something, because I saw anyway, I heard about this program through Humanism in New York, right? And I joined the Thinker Institute, and I learned a lot. I appreciate the group very much. You know, I learned a lot from you. You know, when with all of the program that you I went through like a few programs with you, but I really enjoying that. It's very enlightening. Like, yeah. And for Stoic, I read like book like these kind of book. You see that? You know, yeah, no way. Yeah, but yeah, just I like the philosophy though. I can't wait to hear about this. Thank you.
Great, come on. Anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Yeah, come on.
Sorry, I know
but
Susie, so I can say a few words of Vietnamese, but not much more
you
than
speak
those two.
Vietnamese
No,
better than I speak English.
Only 2 words, definitely not better than your English, but I like to use the 2 words I know. So Sarah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm in Manhattan on the bus right now, going to Best Buy.
Cool.
I've probably like been to like, I don't know, 7 or 8 of these already. And yeah, just in Manhattan and interested in Stoic philosophy, which I've read some of already. But yeah, that's it.
Sarah, you should come on Thursday. We have an in-person food and drink event, the Upper East Side.
I know I saw that, but I have a photography shoot
Got
in
it.
Brooklyn on Thursday, so
No
that's
worries.
why. But maybe
No
the next time.
We'll do another one. We'll do more of them.
Yeah, when it's my schedule.
Cool. Anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Hi everyone, my name is Chirag. I'm actually joining across the border from you guys, actually from Toronto. I'm not sure if it breaks the rules or anything.
No.
I've just started reading more and more about Stoicism and whatnot. I'm pretty new to this. Been reading the same book one of the participants just showed, the one from Ryan Holiday and Meditations as well. And the last few months has been very, very helpful. So I was searching on Meetup, I couldn't find anything.
We have to put here Greg's meetup is in the chat as well, New York City Stoics meetup, so that's another one that you can get more Stoicism from on a regular basis. So I would encourage you to sign up to that one if you want to learn more about Stoicism. Chirag, that's how I met Greg actually. So thanks for joining. And yeah, we're a very global community, so there's no breaking the rules from no matter where you join from. We accept Martians too, although they haven't dialed in yet, although maybe one of those Zoom bombers was a Martian, who knows. So anywhere that you can dial in from into Zoom is welcome, no matter where someone is from. So anyone else want to introduce themselves?
Hi, it's Alice.
Yeah.
I just thought to let everyone know. So if you see in the chat, I put information about free thinkers and also all of Greg's links And yes, so that's there. We're starting to get pretty busy. So I don't know if you all want to start raising your hands to say hello to us and tell us where you're from and what interests you about Stoicism, or if you're practicing.
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Hey, I'm Dave from Toronto as well. So Shirag, you're not alone. I think Shirag, yeah, Shirag, you're not alone. There's philosophers up here, and actually I once attended a in-person Stoic group in downtown Toronto in a bar. And I went there thinking, okay, we're going to talk about Stoicism, but it was actually a bunch of young guys who like to physically do uncomfortable or manly things. I was kind of a fish out of water there. I thought I was going to go there and chat about Stoicism. Meanwhile, these guys are talking about diving into Lake Ontario in the wintertime and I don't know, running long distances and scaling mountains or something. It was sort of a funny vibe. It was like these guys are all about competing to see who can be uncomfortable and stand it the most or something. Anyway, but Stoicism has a long history. I've studied philosophy, so Stoicism has a long history. It goes back to the Greeks. The funny thing is Stoics and Buddhists are kind of similar in the sense that they want to push back on emotions and somehow have you not experience your emotions where they rule you, to somehow separate yourself from your emotions more. You know, Epictetus is a famous Stoic, and he had a handbook. It was called a handbook. And in there he said, you know, if the universe kills your kid and your wife, you just have to accept it. That's the way things roll. Anyway, that's all I have to say for now. Thanks.
So thanks, David. And it's almost 7 o'clock. So I guess I want to kind of kick things off because we have a lot to cover and no, there's never enough time. So I'm just going to do a quick intro for this event is brought to you by the Free Thinker Institute, which is a not-for-profit looking to increase happiness and decrease harm for members and those we can influence. We focus on transformational personal and professional development for anyone interested, organizing these free events on Tuesday evenings where we share knowledge and wisdom with a broad audience. We also have a members only community for anyone interested. Ellis will probably post more information there.
You're on mute.
Shoot, was I on mute that whole time? Oh, bummer. Sorry. So I'm
Not
gonna
the
have
whole time, but part of it.
Yeah, the last minute or so.
Where did the last minute? Okay.
Yeah.
About the last 30 seconds.
I must have had an internet glitch or something. So I'll just say that this event is brought to you by the Free Thinker Institute, which is a not-for-profit looking to increase happiness and decrease harm for members and those we can influence. And then the FTI is focused on transformational personal and professional development for anyone interested. We have these free events on Tuesday evenings where we share knowledge and wisdom with a broad audience. And then we also have a members only community where we actively work to apply wisdom in our personal and professional lives and help each other achieve our goals. So that's a little bit about the FTI. I'm the executive director of the FTI. I'm a software inventor turned entrepreneur whose hobby is writing and discussing practical philosophy, and my desire to do good in the world sort of culminated into founding the FTI. I guess I want to let you, you know, we had a little opening, we were going to give it a little opening, but actually I just want to kind of talk a little bit about the fact that I basically met Greg by attending some of his Stoic meetups, and you know, also including a series of meetups where we applied Stoicism into our daily lives. And I would say the Stoic wisdom that I've learned from Greg has really helped me personally in many aspects of my life, including completely solving my frustration with traffic. I no longer get all frustrated with traffic, which I apply 100% to Greg's credit that he taught me Stoic practical wisdom, which I'm confident he'll talk about, the dichotomy of control, because it's a key aspect of Stoicism. I'm honored to count Greg amongst my philosophy friends and really happy he was able to make time to present tonight. We have large number of people that RSVP'd, 42 people online now and over 90 RSVPs. So we might get even more. But I do want to say a little bit about Greg. He founded the New York City Stoics in 2013. He's also the co-founder of the Stoic Fellowship. And Ellis has posted the links to these things in the chat if you want to learn more about any one. He's also the co-author of a handbook for new Stoics. And he's on the Modern Stoicism team and will be releasing an intermediate level practical Stoic course at Stoic Missing Pieces. And so I want to thank Ellis for putting all those links in for those that want to learn more. Greg is as you can tell, a Stoic expert. And so we're really happy to have him present tonight. And with that, I'm going to let you, Greg, kind of take it away. I'm also going to make you a host in case you wanted to screen share. Where did you go? There we go. Thanks, Greg, and I'll go ahead and let you take it from here.
All right, sounds good. Thank you for the invite, Garrett, and I am going to attempt to share my screen and let me know if you can kind of see the presentation. It looks like things are good to go. All right, so thank you for the invite again, Garrett, and thank you for organizing things and being so on the ball, Alice, in terms of kind of preparation and everything. So today we're going to go over just a broad level overview of Stoicism as a philosophy. And I presume that a lot of people here were attracted to the idea of Stoicism to start, and that's because it's kind of in the cultural milieu nowadays, and you may have heard quite a bit about it, or at least a little bit about it, which is why you came here. But I think in hearing a lot about it, you may be under some misperceptions. And so my goal today is to kind of give a broad overview of Stoicism as a life philosophy and how that differs from other things. So some people may have seen Stoicism and come across it as some kind of life hack, in a sense. For instance, if you want to be more productive or be more resilient, then Stoicism, you can take some tricks from it. But I don't necessarily think that that's a good way to think about Stoicism because, and we'll get into the reason why in a minute, but overall, what one is doing when one is taking it as a life hack is taking little bits of Stoicism and applying it to goals that they already have. Some people may also come to Stoicism because of some kind of psychic pain. And one of the missions of the Free Thinker Institute is to kind of try to minimize suffering in the world. And some people may want to come to Stoicism in order to do that. But some people are kind of surprised to find out that when I give a presentation on basic Stoicism, that the Stoics didn't actually, one of the main goals was not to become, to get rid of one's emotions, not entirely, and certainly not to get rid of emotions because they feel bad. And we'll get into a reason why that is later on. But if people are undergoing diagnosable psychic pain, I think they should probably see therapy, which is a lot more empirically supported, at least a lot of kinds of therapy are, and more targeted to the issues. So I wouldn't say that Stoicism is a therapy either. Instead, I think it's a philosophy of life. And that's different from life hacks in that it's more broad, and it's different from therapies in that it's not specifically targeted just to mental anguish. So what is a philosophy of life, and what are its uses? Well, overall, I think William Irvine in A Guide to the Good Life kind of put it pretty well in that overall, philosophy of life is meant to be a kind of compass that helps guide where you're going. And the famous philosopher Seneca, one of the Stoic philosophers who you may have heard of before, had a quote that says that if you don't know what port you're sailing to, no wind is favorable. And so Stoicism and all philosophies of life, from probably Buddhism as well as other Hellenistic philosophies from the early Greek and then Roman periods as well, kind of are different from life hacks in that they are broad reaching and they're supposed to be kind of an overall set of beliefs, ways of thought, and goals to kind of set you where you want to go in life. So it's different from a life hack in that a life hack, you have a problem and you know it's a problem. You have no doubt about that and you want to solve that problem. That's cool, but that's not really what Stoicism or other life philosophies in general provide. And it's also different from therapy because if you go to a good therapist, unless you're a danger to yourself or others immediately, probably a good therapist will try to get you to align your actions with your life goals, but they won't impose strong values upon you. Philosophy of lives are quite different in that you are given a set of values and not really given. So depending on the philosophy, there are actually arguments to be made about the kinds of values that one should have and then make one's life in accordance with those values so that you live a flourishing life overall. So that's the difference between Stoicism as a life philosophy versus life hacks and therapy. So let's go into a little bit of what Stoicism actually is. First of all, it's one of several Hellenistic philosophies, philosophies that arose in the Greek era after the death of Alexander the Great. And there are a whole bunch of different kinds of philosophies, but they all had one goal, which is to find eudaimonia, which is a Greek word that literally means being a state of having a good spirit or having a good spirit beside you. But more figuratively, I think it is best to translate it as crafting a life that's worth living. It's sometimes translated as happiness, which is a little bit of a problematic translation because happiness makes us think of, I'm happy. It's a feeling, an emotion. Whereas eudaimonia was not necessarily such a thing. Although some philosophies thought that some states of feeling did lead to eudaimonia, they are separable things. And you could think about different kinds of life philosophies by cashing them out in terms of how they conceptualized eudaimonia, or a life that's worth living. And all of these philosophies in the Hellenistic era aimed for eudaimonia, but they just didn't agree on what makes a life worth living, a worthwhile life. And so here I'm just giving some examples of other Hellenistic philosophies that you may actually want to explore after learning a bit more about Stoicism and learning that it's not for you. There were the Cyrenaics who wanted to maximize bodily pleasure and thought that a worthwhile life had the maximum amount of bodily pleasure. That doesn't mean that they were all sex, drugs, and rock and roll, though, because they realized that in order to maximize bodily pleasure, you needed to sometimes undergo some pain and also not overindulge, which could lead to pain down the road. So they were kind of what you would call rational hedonists. The Epicureans were also hedonists of a sort, but they thought that the goal of life and a life worth living was to minimize mental pain, which in itself they thought was the highest pleasure. And I think this has, somebody said during the introduction period that Stoicism has some relationship to Buddhism. I see some vague similarities, but also I think they're quite different. And overall, I would say early Buddhism a little more akin to Epicureanism than Stoicism, because they both wanted to minimize mental pain and reduce suffering. And they also had a similar idea that the absence of certain mental states is actually the highest pleasure. That's something that the Epicureans shared. In fact, if you go to a YouTube channel called Doug's Dharma by an acquaintance of mine who focuses on early Buddhism, one of his latest videos is actually on Buddhism and pleasure, and he brings it up and compares the Epicureans to Buddhism. And I think that's a more apt analogy than Stoicism and Buddhism. Another Hellenistic philosophy were the Pyrrhonian skeptics, who thought that a life worth living was to not hold any beliefs strongly because they were baseless as well as causing mental suffering overall. Then there were the Aristotelians, who were sometimes called the Peripatetics later on because they literally walked around in the early days as they spoke, peripatetic, walking around. And they thought that being an excellent human being or virtuous was the most important thing in life, but you also needed a lot of external things that came down to luck, and you couldn't have a worthwhile life if you didn't have some luck. And then finally, there were the Stoics, who thought that virtue or human excellence is all you need. So let me go into this virtue thing because I've been saying virtue and human excellence, and this is a word that can be misunderstood if one doesn't kind of dig in a little more deeply. So Stoicism, the life philosophy, is meant to kind of have you lead a virtuous life, but virtue has a lot of connotations. in our kind of Christianized modern world that came from, in part, the Victorian era England, and even a lot before that, where virtue kind of brings up ideas of being prim and proper and saving yourself, not having sex before marriage and that kind of stuff. And that's not what virtue really meant in early Stoicism. Virtue is a translation of the Greek word arete, which really means excellence. And you can have excellent things of all sorts. So here's a bread knife, for instance, and in Greek, it wouldn't be crazy to say that you could have an arete bread knife. Such a knife would not rust, be relatively sharp, but also have serrated edges. And so that would make, like, for an excellent knife, and if its handle fell off, it would make an excellent knife, because part of the thing of being a knife is to have a handle to hold it so you could use it. And it's a little weird to say that the knife is virtuous. And that's why virtue is a weird translation. And so when you think of Stoicism saying virtue is the aim of life, it's really to become excellent. And we're going to get in a little more of what that means. And this may seem a little alien, but we seem to have something built into us that allows us to detect excellent examples of things and not excellent examples of things. So for instance, this plant, if you look at it for a minute, the one on the left is probably a more healthy, excellent, flourishing plant. It has plump leaves. It's not wilting, whereas the one on the right is wilting and drooping. And so we know what plants are. We know what good examples of them, healthy examples of them are. And we kind of knew that almost naturally without thinking about it. And similar with a lot of inanimate objects like knives that we have in the world. We know what makes a good example of something and what doesn't. And so Stoicism wants us to become excellent human beings, and they dig into what that means. So how does one become an excellent human being? An excellent knife will be sharp and not rust. Excellent plant will have plump leaves and grow well. An excellent human being consists of 4 traits that the ancient Greeks kind of all circled around, and these are all character traits. The first one is practical wisdom, which is the ability to apply one's rationality to know what's really good and worth pursuing and what's not. The second is justice, which is the ability to give people their fair due, no matter what is going on, and also to be able to judge what is fair or not in any given situation. Courage is the ability to use one's reason to think about what's really worth fearing and avoiding, and what's not worth fearing and avoiding. And temperance is the ability to kind of balance all these things and take things in equal measure, not to overdo things or not to underdo things. Now, these 4 classical virtues are supposedly what make an excellent human being, according to the Stoics. And they could be boiled down to kind of 2 overall traits. The first is pro-sociality. What that means is that human beings are meant to work together. We do better when we cooperate and help each other out. And so if you throw a human being into a forest and just let them be naked, they're not going to probably do very well for very long. We're hairless apes with bad teeth and not great nails and very little defense otherwise. And so on our own, we don't do well. Every one of us is sitting in front of a computer that we didn't build right now, using electricity that we're not generating and may not even know how it's generated, and wearing clothes that we didn't weave, let alone get the fiber for. So a lot of the stuff that we're experiencing right in this moment, right now, is due to human cooperation. And human cooperation is what makes human beings tend to flourish. The second thing is our rationality, and that's the right-hand picture. Now, we know in the modern era that animals, to some degree, do have abstract reasoning ability and language and stuff like that, but still, we humans tend to be far and above a lot of other animals in the animal kingdom and a lot of other living creatures. So while dolphins can communicate to a basic degree, and octopi can do some basic calculations, as can crows, they know counting and they can make some tools, stuff like that. They still can't make space shuttles. They still can't compose iambic pentameter. They still can't compose symphonies or go to the moon. So that is something that those are things that are all fruits of human rationality, and we tend to excel at those. So what makes an excellent human being is being as pro-social and as rational as possible. And those are that's the compass, that is the destination point, the port that Stoicism wants to sail to in order to become an excellent human being. And it takes the shape of practical wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance, but these are all applying our rationality around human and interacting with other people and things in the world. And that's what Stoicism as a life philosophy really boils down to. So in ancient times, the Stoics tried to train to become a Stoic, at least for a lot of their history. Maybe not all of it, but even then, I think they did. And they studied three classical topics. They had kind of a liberal arts education, so to speak. And the first topic that Stoics study is the topic of logic. And logic is a little bit more of a broad topic than what we would say nowadays. It included things like music and poetry, as well as rhetoric, what we would call philosophy of language, as well as formal logic, which is what they would call dialectic. But all of that was a subset of that. Stoics would also cover physics, which is really just natural studies overall. Physis is nature, that's all that is. And so you would study astronomy, geometry, and things like that as well. And finally, what most people know Stoicism for is the ethics, how to cultivate character. And all three of these topics would kind of go together in terms of how to, in terms of Stoic theoretical training. And the Stoics had a simile for how these things all interacted, and they actually thought that you needed all of them in order to have a full Stoic philosophy. If you just focused on the ethics, you're not doing Stoicism. In fact, one of the earliest people who studied with the founder of Stoicism, the founder was named Zeno of Citium, and there was a guy called Aristo who actually thought that you didn't need logic and physics and threw them out. And just studied ethics, and he was known as like a heterodox Stoic and perhaps not a Stoic at all, because he dropped that. He said that the founder of Stoicism was wrong. And of course, this is philosophy, not religion, so there can be debate. But in kind of throwing these things out, a lot of people thought that he was not really a Stoic anymore because he threw out two of the three parts of Stoic philosophy. And the first two are not really thought or talked about much in the popular presentations of Stoicism, yet they were important to Stoicism throughout much of their history. We see Marcus Aurelius in the Meditations saying that he studied logic and physics. He says, I'm not very good at them, but he still studied them. Epictetus has a discourse entitled on why logic is essential to Stoicism. And so even these practical Roman philosophers still actually studied logic and physics to a large degree. Perhaps they withered them a little bit. Physics may not, but even then, physics was important for people who kind of know the background. If you read Marcus Aurelius, he was strongly influenced by how nature works according to the pre-Socratic Heraclitus, and that's physics. If you read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations, he actually puts some of his meditations in formal logical form, and you could actually kind of write out the formal logic if you want to. The book by William O. Stevens, Marcus Aurelius, A Guide for the Perplexed, actually does this at points. And in Stoic Camp that me and Massimo Pigliucci run once a year in upstate New York, we've done that as well, where we've shown the logical form of Marcus Aurelius's, some of his entries in the Meditations. So it's there if you look for it and if you know what you're looking for. But if you just kind of read it kind of in a cursory manner, you're not going to see it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I'm kind of giving this talk and giving you a broad overview of Stoicism as a philosophy, because a lot of people don't know about this stuff. But how do these relate to ethics? Well, the Stoics gave a metaphor of a field where logic is the fence that encircles the field. Physics is the soil that out of which the crop grows that you want to harvest, and that's ethics. And so I think they had quite a few metaphors, and this is my favorite because it's quite clear. Logic protects the fruit, ethics, from getting overrun or eaten by other animals or just basically destroyed. And so by learning how to reason well, you can cultivate your ethics more. And physics is the soil out of which ethics grows, the crop. And physics, so we have, in order to know how we live an excellent life and a life worth living, we have to know what life and the world is like in the first place. And so that's why they had that metaphor. But this is just a theory. How does one actually become a Stoic? Well, the Roman Stoic teacher Epictetus, who was mentioned during our introductions, created a form of Stoic training that involves 3 disciplines in which you train. The first discipline was called by the scholar Pierre Hadot later. Epictetus actually didn't name them, but they are pretty decent names. Epictetus called them the first, second, and third areas of training. But we call them nowadays, thanks to Pierre Hadot, the discipline of desire and aversion, which is the first one. And here's Epictetus's words about what the purpose of this discipline is, this first area of actual Stoic training after one does the basic theory. The most important and most urgent discipline is that which is concerned with the passions, for these arise in no other way than through our being frustrated in our desires and falling into what we want to avoid. This is what brings about disturbances, confusions, misfortunes, and calamities, and causes sorrow, lamentation, and envy, making people envious and jealous, with the result that we become incapable of listening to reason. And this is, if you kind of read it carefully, this is a little eye-opening in terms of the purpose of Stoicism and what you're trying to do. So this first area of training is what a lot of people actually take to be all of Stoicism, to get the passions under control. But it may come as a surprise. That's all the first step of Stoicism. That's the beginning. That's not the entire philosophy, according to Epictetus's layout. And so he does say it's the most important and urgent, but why does he say that? Well, he says that if we practice the discipline of desire, we'll avoid disturbances, which is kind of what a lot of people want when they come to Stoicism, to feel better. Confusions, which is a little bit of logic there, that we don't necessarily get unclear about how to live one's life as well as the thoughts that go through our head. Misfortunes and calamities, because if you desire for something that isn't going to come about, that isn't up to you, then you're going to be unfortunate by definition. And it causes sorrow, lamentation, and envy. These are emotions. But then Epictetus goes on and says it makes people envious and jealous, with the result that we become incapable of listening to reason. And this is actually the motivation of why Stoics want to get a handle on certain subset of emotions called the passions. We're going to get into what the passions are a little bit later, but they're not all emotions. They're a subset of emotions. And they're a subset of emotions that do 2 things. They make people envious and jealous. That is making people antisocial. And with the result that we become incapable of listening to reason. It makes us less rational. In other words, this subset of emotion, called the passions, not all emotions, just the subset, have 2 characteristic marks. They can make us antisocial and turn against our fellow human beings, and they make us incapable of listening to reason. In other words, and Epictetus actually says this at some points, it makes us literally less human. Because, according to the Stoic theory again, what makes us the best human beings possible is making us as cooperative as possible and also as rational as possible. So this subset of mind states, a subset of emotion called the passions, we don't want to get rid of them because they feel bad. There are passions we actually want to get rid of that feel good, like lust, like righteous anger. Those are passions, and they are to be eliminated ideally in Stoicism. Not moderated, not sometimes. You get rid of them. But it's also not all emotions either. And we want to do it not to feel good, but because it makes us antisocial and less reasonable, therefore making us worse human beings, according to the Stoics. So that is the purpose of the discipline of desire, is to eliminate a subset of emotion called the passions to make us better human beings, not to feel better. All right, so that's enough of the theory. So how do you actually practice it? Well, here's one practice from the handbook Enchiridion 2 that Epictetus gives. Remove your aversion, then, from everything that is not within our power, and transfer it to what is contrary to nature among those things that are within our power. This is a fancy way of saying stop giving a crap about what is going on, and stop being afraid of what the outcomes of things will be. And instead, be afraid of the fact that you're afraid of outcomes in the first place. So remove your aversion from everything that is not within our power. So anything that's not completely up to us, and then we try to remove it. Instead, we actually want to become worried about a different thing. And